Hi everyone, it's Michelle again. In part one of my series of videos, I went over the whats and the whys of the gendered bodies. So what the different types of bodies are and why certain bodies are reacted to the way that they are. For this video, I'll be covering information about how non-cis bodies are fetishized and the different political experiences that they have as well. Both of those subjects actually are kind of umbrellaed by non-cis violence and safety issues. So I figured it would be good to fit them together in one video. As time passes, our society is constantly developing, and as we develop, we tend to become slightly more accepting to things that our ancestors could not comprehend. In my first video, I had talked about two main points: intersectionality, or how the oppressed are connected, and how fear tends to stem from the unknown or the misunderstood. In the early history of America and Europe specifically, there was a lot of curiosity when it came to the bodies of Black women. They are unfortunately still very much fetishized, although now with more subtlety when women like Sarah Bartman were sold to circuses and placed naked on display for basically white men to go and pay to look at. This over-sexualization of bodies happens to anyone whose body doesn't fit into the hegemonic standard. So this includes people of different races or ethnicities. You see it a lot with Black women, Asian fetishes, like the geisha, Hispanic women as well. And it also includes bodies with disabilities and deformities, like we read about in Alison Kafer's chapters. It also happens in overweight bodies, underweight bodies, and especially non-cis bodies. It was interesting looking into how non-cis, mostly transgender individuals are desired.
I also had a guy ask me if I would be willing to arm wrestle him for $200. Also, if he could film it and if he could have no clothes on while that was happening.
Or if we're being honest about it, how they are fetishized. Kafer talks about her experience with being an amputee and what it was like for her in a more romantic or intimate setting. She also discusses the difficulty of deciphering between desire and disgust. She wrote, women who had felt profound shame about their bodies reported significant gains in their self-confidence after discovering devotees, or devotees being people that are interested in Alison Kafer talks about her experience with being an amputee and what that has meant for her in a more romantic or intimate setting. She also discusses the difficulty of deciphering between desire and disgust. She wrote, women who had felt profound shame about their bodies reported significant gains in their self-confidence after discovering devotees. Devotees being people that are interested or enthusiastic about someone or something, and in this instance, amputees. I find myself relating to this as an overweight person whose lack of self-confidence was written on my face for many years. There is an initial joy when someone takes an interest in you because you've spent so long bringing yourself down and believing this lie that society has built around you that you can't possibly be loved because you're not the ideal body for whatever reason. And following that initial reaction, there are typically two ways that it plays out. So the person being fetishized will continue on a path of basically ignorance when it comes to how they're being treated, or they will realize that they are worth more than what makes them different. It reminds me of the supposed dating technique, negging, or following a compliment with something kind of negative. For instance, when someone says, I love you, and they follow it up with, because you're fat, or because you're black, or because you're trans, or because you're short, or whatever it is. Never, I love the whole entirety of you. It's always, I love you because of this one thing that intrigues me. And what becomes especially scary and upsetting is that this thought process, which Kiefer mentions in her chapters, that devotees have. So I'm the only one interested in you, so you should welcome my attention, whatever its form. That is seen in society a lot. So if you, through the study of different types of bodies and the different levels of oppression, you'll find that this is the thought process that occurs in many different types of privileged individuals. They hold that privileged identity over the person they're oppressing in an effort to keep that power intact. So it becomes very dangerous, to both mentally and physically, to the oppressed individual. So I've talked a lot about the transgender body and individuals' experiences as transgender, but I want to talk a moment about the different types of non-conforming bodies, because there are several different kinds just outside of transgender as well. So my friend Stephanie happens to be kind of in that situation. She, to me, is a strikingly beautiful woman, and she identifies as female. She always has, as long as I've known her. However, her look is more gender fluid, so she's really similar to like a Ruby Rose, where she could pass as either or if she felt like it. So she has short hair. She has a very athletic frame because she's a very, very successful athlete. But as long as I've known her, I've always recognized her as a female. That's who she is to me. I see her, she's a female. That's what I see. So over the weekend, she had shared a story on social media about her experience that she had being stopped at a security checkpoint while getting on a plane to come home. She had been asked for her ID, and when she asked why, they told her because they wanted to verify her gender. And she asked why they couldn't just ask her and why they had to make a spectacle of it. And then they kind of very sternly just said, please give me your ID. So I called her once I knew that she was like home safely, and I asked her about the experience because I was surprised by it. And like I said, to me, she's very much a female. She looks like a woman to me. And I was surprised that anyone would ever question that. So she had told me that she was just tired, that she just wanted to come home. She wasn't that upset about it, that she just wanted to vent on social media. And she said, it happens all the time. And I was shocked. So I asked her what she meant by it happens all the time. And she said that people will find it necessary to ask her gender, or they'll question her gender or mislabel her gender. And she said it happens all the time, which is a shock to me. She told me a story about about a month ago, she was in the restroom, the ladies' restroom at a movie theater. And the woman behind her asked her if she was allowed to be in the women's room. So that's kind of my segue into what I want to talk about next, which is going to be the politics of the transgender or non-cisgender body, and the safety really of it. So the push for gender-neutral bathrooms has happened really only recently. Early 2015, West Hollywood, I believe, was the first city in California who had a mandate to have gender-neutral restrooms, which is interesting to me because I always think of California as a very liberal state compared to a lot of others. But as I was reading more and more about it, I couldn't help myself but feel like arguments against gender-neutral restrooms were kind of more and more ludicrous. I was genuinely amused by some of the concerns by adults in the Ellen Fredericks article about single-stall restrooms and multi-user gender-neutral restrooms. So one of the questions asked was, would kids take advantage of the private space to make out or smoke cigarettes in the stalls? And that was a question that came off of the single stall gender neutral restroom option. And all I could think of was my mom admitting to smoking in the stalls when she was in high school, when it was the single gender restroom. It was just a women's restroom, and they would still smoke in the stalls, so that's not going to stop them. And then the making out. So I think maybe more of a more genuine concern would maybe be the back seats of cars or under the bleachers if we're going to go stereotypical, like high schoolers making out. There was also the argument if the bathrooms were multi-user. So the question was, would 9-year-old girls have to use a stall next to their male teachers? Would it be safe? I mean, maybe they might have to go to the restroom next to an adult in the stall next to them. And yes, they would be safe because, well, in my opinion, because it's a closed stall, not an open urinal. No one is forcing anyone to view anyone else going to the restroom. You're just trying to go to the bathroom in peace. And also, if your concern is whether your underage child is safe around his or her teacher, your concerns might be a little bit bigger than what kind of gender the restroom focuses on. So, I did my mini interview with my friend Emily, who I talked about in my first video, and we discussed the old bathroom debate. And as a transgender individual, she said, being able to safely use a public restroom isn't a privilege, it's my right. And also, gender neutral restrooms aren't only for transgender people. And I thought for a moment what she had said, and I told her she was wrong. I told her that her right was to feel safe in public, period, not just in a restroom. So that's kind of where I stand on it. That is some of the politics and the sexualization, I guess, of the non-gendered body or the transgender body. And it's just really important to do like research and understand who these people are. They're just like you and I are. They don't want to use restrooms for any other reason. They're just going to the bathroom. They just want to live their life. And why can't we just let them, just let it be?